There's a universal fact that the 80s produced the best toy lines of all time. And on today's Top 5 Friday, we're going to take a look back at some of those toy lines as I go over my top 5 favorite 80s toy lines of all time.
Oh, it's Friday night. Don't know what I'm gonna do tonight. I could sit here and pick my nose while I watch a brand new video. Whoa. Top 5 Friday. Top 5 Friday tonight.
5 is a sleeper hit. You may not even remember it, but it's laser tag. This was one of the coolest things that I remember getting back in the day. It was like you actually were shooting a real laser. Well, I guess technically you were. You would strap this thing on your chest or different places, and then you would have a gun. And then you would try to go hit other people, and it would register a hit. I mean, it's just like laser tag that you would go and play at maybe like a bowling alley today. But back then, this was our version of it, which I don't know if much has changed really, but it worked pretty good actually. The problem was, unfortunately for me, was that none of my friends had it, so I was really kind of only playing with myself. But it was still pretty cool. I would put the target, back in the backyard on the fence, and then I would shoot it, and then try to strap it to the dog and shoot it. And it was fun for what it was. I just wish I had more people to play with me. And it really kind of reminded me of the show V for whatever reason. Number 4 is Legos. I realize that Legos have been around for a very long time, since before the 80s, and they still exist today. But specifically what I'm talking about are the 80s space set Legos. Space stuff was huge in the 80s, so there were tons of different 80s space Lego sets. I ended up getting a few of them. I liked all the ones that I had. They were all pretty cool, but my favorite was still the Blacktron. I think that's what it was called, the Blacktron. But it was this huge black spaceship that had yellow windows in it. It was just really cool looking. I would end up building the set. I would build it, and then I would take it apart, and inevitably I would always just create my own stuff. And I had this big box of Legos with different sets thrown in, and so I would take it to my friends across the street. I had to have been like maybe 7, 8, I don't remember. But we would play all summer long. We would if we weren't in there playing Nintendo, we were playing Legos outside, and that bottom of the box just got just filth and grime and dirt and sand all at the bottom. So I can still remember the feeling of scraping my hands across the bottom of that box to grab a specific piece, and then having the dirt grind. It's like nails on a chalkboard at the bottom of that box. Just all the dirt that was accumulated on it. I could literally feel it in my head. It's just driving me crazy. I would love to get some of those sets back now, but they're just so expensive now to get those complete sets. Some of the most expensive toys that I still want. So it's nothing I'm gonna get anytime soon, but I would like to think that down the road, eventually I could get a few more of these sets. So they're definitely some of my most wanted toys. Now, I know it's not the first toy that I ever got, obviously, because I had to have been maybe 5 to 6 years old when it came out. However, this is one of the very first memories I have of getting a toy. My dad was working at an auto parts place, and I remember after school I was picked up and I was in the break room waiting for him to get off, and it was my birthday, and the B-Wing, the Return of the Jedi had just come out, and there's a B-Wing just sitting there in the box. That I remember ripping that thing open and just thinking that this was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life, because I actually hadn't even seen the movie. Star Wars in general had some of the coolest toys of all time. They were a little disproportionate at times. They weren't exactly movie accurate, but that was necessary because you had to be able to get the figures in the cockpit and to sit down and all the different stuff like that. So, but regardless, the toys were cool, because if you had watched Star Wars, and what kid didn't love Star Wars, you wanted to play with the toys. I actually had a few Star Wars toys. I had the X-Wing and a few others. It still remains one of the coolest lines, one of my favorite lines, just because of the franchise that it's a part of. And a lot of my friends around the neighborhood had all these different vehicles, and I didn't. So it was still cool to be able to go and play with theirs whenever I saw something that I I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get. I remember I actually found a Y-wing in somebody's garbage, and that's how I ended up getting my Y-wing. It was in one of the neighbors' garbage. My theory is maybe the kid was just bad and his mother threw away his toys, which, hey, worked out great for me. I love to cheat on these lists, and I'm going to do that on the number 2 slot. The number 2 slot goes to Transformers / Gobots. Now, the reason I'm clumping both of these together is because as a kid, I realized that there were 2 completely different franchises. However, in my mind, it still pretty much was the same thing. You got vehicles that transform into robots and vice versa. I had Transformers, I had Gobots. I didn't one day say, okay, I'm going to have a Transformers battle here, and then the next day go, I'm going to have a Gobots battle here. No, all the robots were battling each other. I would sit here and name off a few of my favorite. However, that might ruin a potential Top 5 Friday down the road, and I don't want to do that. But I absolutely loved the concept. I loved the concept of robots, and then when you take them and you convert them and make them transform into vehicles and all these different things, like rocks, like the Rock Lords or whatever. Still don't get that. I mean, what 80's kid didn't just go ape bonkers over something like that? You had big robots, you had simple robots, you had complex robots, you had robots that would join together and create a huge robot. Anything you can think of, and something for everyone. And while, yes, I know that some people don't get Gobots and they don't understand the appeal, I really, really liked them. And one thing that I really liked about the Gobots was not even so much the Gobots themselves, which were very much more simple than the Transformers for the most part. They had really cool bases. Whether or not you're talking about the command centers or just whatever, Transformers, to my knowledge, didn't have anything like that. They had kind of like this cardboard little play set, but nothing like an actual giant vehicle that all the Transformers could go in, like the Gobots. And maybe that's because all the Gobots were pretty much, for the most part, all the same size. There were some exceptions, whereas Transformers, some were really big, some were small, so it'd be hard to kind of create a play set that would accommodate all of them. But that still remains the fact that the Gobots really did have some really cool vehicles that the Gobots themselves could ride in. Say what you will about the Gobots, but they had some of the best names of all time. They took a page out of the He-Man book. You have Cop-Tor. Honorable mentions. Let's do honorable mentions to Muscle Man figures. Those things are and still are cool. I actually picked up a few at a toy show just last weekend. So I'm still looking out for Muscle Man figures. And of course, Boglins. Always thought those were cool as well. So I know some of the other guys on this channel like to play up the narrative that I was the spoiled kid that got everything. Maybe that's because I didn't have to contend with 5 other brothers. I was the only kid for probably, I think, like 5 to 6 years. And I'm not talking about in my, not having a brother or sister. I mean in the immediate family. So all grandparents, everyone, I was the only kid. So when it came Christmas time and birthday time, they didn't have to worry about getting anybody else stuff. It was me. Perks of being born first, I guess. I did get some amazing toys in this next toy line, my number 1 toy line, but that's because my dad worked his hands to the bone every day and got great pride and joy out of just giving me a really awesome Christmas and really, really amazing birthday. So if you're watching this, which I don't know why you would be, thank you. It means a lot. But let's not drag it on any further. Some of you have probably already guessed, but if you haven't, let me tell you, the first number 1 80's toy line in my rankings is G.I. Joe. I loved military aircraft, all that different type of stuff, and I loved the cartoon. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't love Transformers and Gobots cartoons. Of course I did. But I really, really liked the G.I. Joe cartoon slightly more. I loved collecting the figures. They all had their different personalities and the different looks, and they were all very, very different and unique. But the vehicles is what really sold me on it. The vehicles were really super cool and amazing. And it's been established on Toy Chasers that I had the giant aircraft carrier. That was my gift for one Christmas. That was my only gift. But let me tell you, it was worth it. It was so cool. This thing was actually too big for the house. There was no way it was going to fit in my room. Nowhere. We didn't have a den. We had a living room, a couple of bedrooms, and that was it. There was not, so we had to put it on the patio. So I remember waking up Christmas morning, didn't see my present anywhere, and my dad was like, maybe you should go look outside. And this is Texas. It was in the middle of winter, but it was probably 80 degrees. My dad was like, why don't you go outside? And I looked outside, and I see this giant aircraft carrier that built, because this thing had to be built, and trust me, I have it now, and it takes a while to build it. So my dad probably, he's stayed up all night building this thing outside on the patio, and I go walking out, and it's there, and my eyes probably become saucers, and I'm like, holy crap, you actually got me this. I could not believe it. My friends who weren't really my friends in the neighborhood immediately, for some reason, coincidentally became my friends, and I think it's just because they realized I had an amazing personality after all those years of pretty much just not even caring. So we had a great time. My friends would bring their G.I. Joe aircraft, and we would have battles and just a crazy G.I. Joe adventure out on the back porch. And it was some of the coolest 80s memories I could ever have or ever hope to have. But anyway, let me hear what your favorite 80s toy lines are down below. Give this video a thumbs up and all that good stuff. And if you are a new person who has never seen a video and you want to subscribe, all you gotta do is hit that button right up there. And also, if you're a new person, or maybe you're a subscriber and have missed a few videos, there's a video right here, and there's probably more than likely a video down there as well. And down below, right here, we have a Patreon if you want to support us that way. And down below, there's shirts and DVDs for sale. The linkage will be clickable.